Welcome to Arc Rambles with mildly amused Milksnake, where I overshare my thoughts on randomly chosen topics over Arc gameplay to justify spending hours in game being unproductive. And today's topic is relationships and how to find them. YouTube was shoving videos about them in my face for a while, so I'll shove that one back at YouTube. I actually happened to be in one, so I thought some of my thoughts and opinions might be worth sharing, as relationship struggles seem to be a unifying trait amongst humanity. A little disclaimer, I base my opinions on my experience. Don't blindly take any relationship advice from the internet without considering unique circumstances of your position in life and society. So, romantic relationships. How do you even get one? I've heard a lot of opinions from my friends, and even my husband, that for someone who's single, finding a partner, and one that is compatible with their character and lifestyle, seem to be near impossible. Male or female, most people my age that I know are single. And I'm 28 years old, that's not really young. And none of them are even into irresponsible behavior, hookups, or have a string of relationship trauma that would make it naturally harder for them. My female friends from uni tried dating apps, and to no avail, since all people they matched with either behaved in rather uncouth manners, or after giving them chance in real life, turned out to be too different in terms of lifestyle preferences or incompatible character traits. I'm actually the only one of my uni friend group to be married today. I never actually tried those apps, despite my friends' recommendations. The way I met my husband was pretty unique, but I'll elaborate on that later. The reason I didn't was that the entire formula of it seemed icky. To me, at least. Think of it. The whole idea is that you're supposed to judge the person on the app from their profile, give them a sign that you're interested, and connect if they're interested back. Can you immediately think of one critical flaw in that? Well, you are supposed to judge a person on what they choose to write and show about themselves on an app that has a premise of a place to advertise yourself for a potential romantic partner. The underlying intent of being on this app with a sole purpose of finding people to date creates an environment where self-advertisement of other people will be inherently unreliable. People will go out of their way to get the best angle on the picture, convince you that they're an interesting person with many hobbies, and that they would be a wonderful partner for really anyone. I haven't personally browsed through those apps, so take my knowledge of them with a grain of salt. But wouldn't you try to always put your best foot forward on them? How many of us, when put in a situation where we feel like we need to make good impression, try to spin ourselves into being way more impressive or interesting than we actually are? I'm not even free of this myself. If an acquaintance would ask what I work on, I'd rather say I'm doing video editing than to say I mooch off my husband to pursue a very unlikely career as a video game YouTuber with just very basic skill in operating DaVinci Resolve. Don't worry, by the way, my husband fully supports that, but he's probably more of an optimist about it than I am. Still, talking to someone I barely know, it wouldn't pass my brain's social suicide check. And you know what? I don't even know if the acquaintance would think worse of me, or just think I'm super lucky. Am I the only one without exciting life and fascinating career? Or are we all just gaslighting each other that we're fully functional adults? But really we're all just partially goblins trying to do our best. So what am I getting at? Places where you're asked to make public appearance advertising yourself as a potential romantic option are probably the worst places out of all to actually find a partner that will suit your life. People's real character will inevitably obscure itself, and you'll be no better off in passing judgment on their compatibility with you than if you blindly drew straws. And that's not even the worst thing about the idea of dating apps. At least not for me. The reason I never gave them as much as a chance is that you're not just evaluating one person at a time on them. You're prompted to go through seemingly endless list of people, swipe on more than one individual at a time. After all, what are the actual odds of matching with them? With hundreds or thousands of people just like yourself also swiping? And chances are your tastes in people aren't even that unique, so folks you find particularly appealing are probably drowning in attention. But what do you do if you do match, and not just with one individual, but several? You're supposed to talk to them all, right? Filter further, because you need to narrow down your options, at least for monogamous relationship. But straight up picking one at that point is just a waste of attention if you ghost all but your most preferred match, if you can really even determine that just based on their self-advertisement. There's still a chance they're talking to other people at that very moment. You need to play the numbers game on dating apps. And I couldn't do it. I tend to reach a point of caring about person's feelings pretty quickly if engaging in a conversation that is deeper than small talk. The idea that, as a woman, I might match and try to get to know several men in a short amount of time, with clear intent of acquiring a romantic relationship, and then have to either say, "Sorry, you're sweet, but I'm interested in someone else more than you," or just ghost them to save myself the awkwardness, always seemed repulsive to me. I can only analyze one prospect at a time without creating a situation where I'd have to hurt someone's feelings and hopes without any better reason than I just had a better option in the backlog. Okay, dating apps are bad, you say, and so does half of the internet. But then where do I look? Now, that's a good question. Many of us nowadays seem to think it inconsiderate or rude to cold approach people, and probably for good reasons. It is again very close to playing a lottery. Don't get me wrong, it's still better than dating apps. At least you don't run the risk of getting catfished or severely misguided by curated photos, at least in terms of physical attraction. But you know essentially nothing about random people, except for subtle body language cues like their posture, reaction to direct environment, etc. And those strangers, unless strictly in spaces designed for leisure, have stuff to do and places to be. They might feel like you're a bother, or if they're an anxious woman type, they might actually feel threatened by you or creeped on. Especially if you're not one of those people who have faces so innocent that they could get away with murder while holding a bloodied knife. They might not even be single or into your gender. You never know, really. Still, I do believe cold approach can be a viable method for people to get a partner, especially if you're confident. It's just a road that's bound to be paved with lots of failure, because lack of many options to deduce potential receptiveness and compatibility of approached people will inevitably result in a lot of rejections. I remember when I was single, I was cold approached several times by men, and while I haven't ended up dating any of them, I did find myself in some quite interesting conversations. Those conversations, however, quickly revealed reasons for me not to date them, as I am no small talk person. I'd quickly find out in those situations that people either followed religions I don't subscribe to or had different values than me in areas I'd find hard to compromise on. But that was in the end just bad luck for them. If someone with core values and interests close enough to my own cold approached me when I'm not busy, that could have easily worked out. Now, there's only a few things I can advise you from a woman's perspective if you want to try cold approaching people. If you're a man approaching women, which I feel is still most common scenario, pay attention to how confident the women are looking. If they seem hyper aware of their surroundings, appear to be feeling unsafe or insecure in any way, shape or form, it's probably better to leave them alone. Those are people who are most likely to feel threatened by a sudden approach from a stranger, or they are not in the area they feel familiar and secure in. Regardless of sex, if they appear to be in a hurry or are deeply focused on something in their phone or otherwise, Well, that doesn't mean they'll feel threatened. They either won't have time for you, or your approach will cause them initial negative reaction humans have when they're interrupted while doing something they care about doing, which can start you off on the wrong foot. And if they're working, really better not to bother. I know there's plenty of relationship stories that start with a guy asking out a cashier or barista, but you have much higher chance of making them feel awkward instead and becoming a story about an obnoxious customer in the workplace if you straight up ask them out. I did work as a cashier a few years ago, and I always thought the guys who tried asking me out there were rather inconsiderate. There were other customers to serve and things to be done. Not to mention, I couldn't really point it out because you're still supposed to be patient and friendly to customers no matter how you feel. Also, for people who are crushing on cashiers, remember, we know your purchases. We remember and we totally judge you for it. If we judge your spending habits bad, you wouldn't want to get with us anyways. If you buy cigarettes and vapes and the cashier hates smoking, she obviously won't even consider you. The best you can really do if you only come in contact with your crush at his or her work is to assess their reactions to you over time. Make some initial small talk if you'd like. Ask them if they enjoy whatever stuff you're buying, or if they like their job if it's not a store. If they try to dodge conversations and stay all business or fake friendly, but not trying to prolong the interaction, leave them be. If they, however, seem to linger on those interactions and be open, then you might actually have a chance if you ask them out. In the end, though, cold approaching is still hard. It can be worth it sometimes, but it is really super hard. Then again, is there anything else to do other than cold approaching and using places designed for strangers to go to hook up and advertise themselves for a date? Well, yes, actually. Now's the time I'm gonna tell you how I met my husband. It is a pretty odd story, but I think the situation we've met under gave us some of the best possible opportunities to assess each other as romantic prospects without necessarily risking a lot. We were both survival game enjoyers. We've actually met through the internet on a Minecraft experiment server. Back then, Minecraft was my main game. Now, if you're not into multiplayer gaming, I don't think this story doesn't apply. Our circumstances and hobbies are unique to us, but the point is, we've met in an environment that we both entered not because we had to or because we were looking to advertise ourselves as a potential partner for someone. It was just something we did because we enjoyed it. Why is that important? At the point we started interacting, we actually had things to talk about and work together on, before we even formed any expectations or hopes for a romantic spark to happen. We could start interacting without the feeling of being put on the spot and having to decide whether or not we want to give romance a chance to happen. And we've been able to observe each other in a wider social setting, seeing how we interact with people we don't necessarily expect anything from. Neither of us was putting on a show because we didn't come there with the thought of finding love, so we could get a good idea of each other's temperament before even engaging in a game project together. By the time I've started considering him as a possible romantic interest, we were already solid teammates who cooperated on several projects together. Although, just in game, little did I know he started thinking about this possibility too. Eventually, besides just working together in Minecraft team, we've started inquiring about our personal lives and other non-Minecraft related interests. I admit I put him through what I call a trial of fire. One of my very first personal questions I asked, since the idea of him being a prospect came into my mind, was about his beliefs on religion, morality and philosophy. To be honest, I always did it to anyone who I was even mildly interested in. It might have scared a lot of people off, because that's like throwing a newly budding relationship into a deep lake of boiling water. But listen. If a person is gonna fundamentally disagree with you on those important values, The outcome of that revelation will be the same regardless of how deep in relationship you are before you discover it. To ask about those straight away is just to not waste yours or their time. If you ask them about it before you disclose your interest in them, that's even better because they won't feel like they need to obfuscate their true feelings to not disappoint you or miss out on a dating opportunity. If, in that situation, our morals and ideals were inherently incompatible, I knew that we would agree to disagree and continue just being Minecraft teammates. Because I have seen him being a respectful person, not just in interactions with me, but other random internet strangers as well. I saw no risk in that, only benefit of knowing if that relationship is even remotely worth pursuing. And if someone does get scared off by it because they either lack proper communicative skills to discuss those topics calmly or just are too sensitive for it, then you're probably dodging a bullet. Only later we talked about stuff like our hobbies beside Minecraft, our friendships, dreams for the future, preferences of environment, eventually even relationships and our desire for one. We've talked like this for a couple of months, and finally I nudged a confession of romantic interest from him through a cheeky truth or dare question, because I'm a coward and I didn't want to confess first. Of course, meeting people on the internet does have its downsides, like finding yourself in love with someone on a different continent. Man had to travel across the ocean to meet me in real life. But he did, and we got along great. We knew we would because of so many deep conversations we've shared. Also, we were lucky that neither of us were liars in those conversations. Though we still have to deal with immigration nonsense. That's particularly painful. In the end though, I'm not trying to say that internet, or games specifically, is the best place to meet and get to know people. A lot of good folks aren't gamers, but just look for people in places where you specifically like to hang out and have your leisure. Look amongst people you cooperate within hobby or activity that suits you. Analyze them in the group setting, get an idea of their character as they interact with you and others outside of romantic context. Do not go to places just for the purpose of looking for a partner. Be in places you genuinely want to be in and talk to people who are also genuinely enjoying being there. If you want to find folks who are enough like you to be compatible with you to build a life with, you need to find people with similar interests. Perhaps even look for potential in people you already hang out with somewhat regularly. If you see them as worthy companions, maybe there is space for something more to spark. Think deeper than having hots for an exciting stranger. And don't worry about shaking up social order of your friend and acquaintance groups with unreciprocated feelings. Get to know important things about people you consider before confessing your interest to lower the probability of starting a relationship that is doomed to fail. And that is honestly the best way I know how to find a lasting positive romantic relationship. Now, if something else works for you, let me know in the comments. I'd be really glad to hear it, and maybe I'll include it if I ever do a video about relationships again. Which I probably will, it's a whole river of a topic. Perhaps even the very next Rambles episode will still be related to it somehow. As for today's video, I am done. See you in the next one. Like and subscribe. Bye!